everyone, and welcome back to Deeper Roots. Many times, one of the biggest warnings that young people who grow up in church get is to not get tattoos. And when you come from a Hispanic culture like that of our church, it becomes clear as to why it would be something you don't do, as it is attributed to gangs and rebelliousness. But amongst the culture shift that we're witnessing in America, is that still a good enough reason? Does the Leviticus prohibition apply to our society, especially when it's looked at within the context? Today's question is all about that culture difference, specifically around tattoos. Can Christians get tattoos? Leviticus is fairly specific about what the Lord says, but we examine this passage along with other considerations to help you, the listener, understand the why of the position our ministry holds. This subject is rather complicated and difficult, especially amongst young people who have been told not to get tattoos all their lives, but see nothing wrong about getting tattoos. Although other loving and passionate followers of Christ may have slightly different views, we hope this podcast will be edifying to you today as well. This question was submitted to us by a listener, and if you want to ask a question yourself, or you want to follow up on a question that we're talking about, or the question from today, you can go ahead to ibbbbn.org/deeperroots. We really want to hear your questions, so please keep them coming. Thank you for joining us on Deeper Roots today. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Deeper Roots podcast. I want to thank everyone for joining us. My name is Derek. We have here joining us today Pastor Luis as well as Esther. And today we actually have a couple of guests. We have Cynthia, who's a young adult from our college and career group, and we also have Erica, who is a teen in our youth group. I just want to thank you guys for joining us today. Today's question is a question that was submitted to us by someone who was submitting a question before we started the podcast. And the question was, how can we respond when people ask why it's wrong to get tattoos? And I think that's kind of like, it's a question that even Christians have to deal with. Culturally speaking, our church, we've been very no, tattoos are bad all the time. And there's no exception. But at some point, there's something to be said about legalism. There's something to be said about what does the Bible say about it, and why do we believe what we believe, and is it wrong for Christians to get tattoos, and etc. We can go on and on with these follow-up questions, but I'm going to give the time to Pastor.
All right, thank you for whoever asked the question. I think this is one of those classic questions you get in youth group, and I think it's like you said, yes, we do have a position in our church as far as why we don't do that. But I think sometimes it can be explained away really easy just by saying no, right? And with this program, and we hope that through this episode, that we can share the reasons more why we prefer not to have tattoos as Christians. Now, having said that, I do want to make a disclaimer. Whoever's hearing this episode, I do want to say that there is other Christians who are good, loving Christians who love the Lord that may disagree with this position, and they do. And I have friends in ministry who may disagree with this position as well. But like I said, they may have their reasons. We have our reasons, and part of this reason of this episode is just to share those reasons and why we would not have advised someone to have a tattoo. So we're going to talk about that. So when it comes to tattoos, okay, we have to start from the very basic verse that we always go to. So I don't know if you would like to go to that scripture, but in Leviticus 19:28, if we can go there, Leviticus 19:28. And this is just a starting point, but because really it's not so much just because of this verse that I believe that, but it's also much deeper than that. But in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28, it says this. It says, "You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor tattoo any marks on you. I am the Lord." So That's where most people that are opposed to having tattoos, they go to, right? And it's usually just, okay, there's the reason, no tattoos. And I think even though that is a great verse and that is probably the best verse to start with, we have to go deeper if we're really going to have that position of why we say no or why we shouldn't have tattoos. And I guess the question we first have to attack, and maybe you guys can participate. You guys are here today, so thank you for being here. Why do you think God would tell the people of Israel not to tattoo themselves? And then it also says cuttings for the dead, which of course is not a practice that we do today, but it was a practice that they were familiar with, and that God's saying don't do that, and along with tattooing yourself. So why do you guys think God would say that? What was the reason behind him telling his people not to do these two practices? What do you guys think?
I'd like to hear our guest, who has, and again, you've grown up, and Cynthia, you both have grown up at church. So I think you have teachings that you've heard at Sunday school or whatever it may be. So I'm interested in hearing what reasons have you heard of why tattoos are not okay? Or are they?
Well, based on what they've taught me since I was little is to not get tattoos because you might get something that you're going to regret, and there's no turning back from it because it's permanently on your body.
Okay.
I think more it just, from what I understood, it was that it distinguished them, and that's something that I think God would do a lot in the Old Testament, is he would want them to be distinguished from the other people. And I think back then they were probably all getting tattoos and doing some sort of marks on their body, and he didn't want that. He wanted them to be separate from that.
Mm-hmm. I think separation is a key word, because one of the things God tells his people over and over again is about being holy, right? And that's a theme that repeats in the New Testament as well, about being separate, about being different, right, from the people. And these two practices were actually pagan practices. So that's what the people around the Canaan were practicing. People that were the what's called original inhabitants. That's practices that they would do to their foreign gods and to their pagan gods. And then God says, hey, I don't want you to be copying them. Don't be doing these cuttings in your flesh. Don't be doing these tattoos on your skin. But let's be honest, how many of you have heard some arguments against this passage? Because there are good arguments. I mean, people can come up and saying, well, but what are some of the arguments you guys have heard against using just this passage as a basis? No, because that's the easy answer. No, don't get a tattoo, but you don't go further into it. What are some of the arguments you've heard?
It having to do with culture. Like, I know a lot of Indian people, because it's in their culture, like when the bride's about to get married, they get henna on their body, and I'm not sure what it represents, but it's something that they do as like having to do with their culture.
Okay.
I've also heard a lot of taking it out of context. I've heard a lot of people say that like, he's telling them to do specific stuff. Because if you read before the ones before that, it says you shall not eat anything with blood or anything like that. And obviously that's something that we kind of do now, so why not the tattoos is what a lot of people would say.
Exactly. Verse 27, thou shalt not shave around the sides of your head, nor shall you disfigure the edges of your beard. So, I mean, there's a lot of passages and a lot of verses there that you could use as an argument. Well, we don't do this anymore, right? Or it's not something that we don't practice anymore, so why can't we tattoo? So that's a very fair and honest argument, because there are going to be things here in the law or in the rules God gave Israel that don't apply to us today. But then the question would come, why would tattoos then apply, or should it apply? Any questions to that, or any comments?
Well, I think one of the other things that people bring up, if you don't mind me bringing up something else, like, it's just like forgiveness of sin, like the completion of the law when Jesus died on the cross, right, is no longer like. You take a look at a lot of the laws that are present in Leviticus, things like don't like shave your beard, or like don't or you have to, like, all women have to have their head covered, and all those laws being completed with death of Jesus Christ. And is tattoos among those sins, or like among those laws that have been completed?
Yeah, and that's true. When you look at it from a, let's say, salvation point of view, a doctrinal point of view, yeah, of course, the law, Jesus completed the law for us. It's done. But then the question is, are we, like the New Testament would ask, are we free then to sin? Are we free then just to do whatever we want? And then Paul answers that clearly.
No.
Says no, right? So there's some principles where we would say, okay, so how do the principles that God still wants us to follow in the New Testament apply to this point of tattooing themselves? I think one of the things we need to discuss is like I said, again, the motivation behind God's commandment here. Like you said, being different, separating themselves. I think when we look today at the world and we look at pagan society, what we'll call pagan society is anybody who doesn't follow God. The world, we would call it as well. There's certain things like, for example, shaving of the head that's not necessarily connected to a pagan practice or to a bad side of society, or bad things that are done in society. So that's why I think that doesn't apply. But when it comes to tattoos, we should ask ourselves, do tattoos, or are tattoos normally connected to certain kind of attitudes or a certain kind of practices in society, in our pagan society today, that where the principle would still apply, that we shouldn't be like them, that we need to be separate? What do you guys think about that? Because when it comes to shaving your head, I mean, that's not been connected, and no one ever associates that with, oh man, you shave your head, you're from the rebels or whatever. But if we're honest, when it comes to tattoos, there is a connotation of rebellion connected to it in society in general. There is a connotation of wanting to make a statement or to display yourself. Not everybody, and that's why I want to be clear about that there are good Christians, there are loving Christians that differ on this point, and they may get a tattoo because they think they're glorifying God through it. But like I said, in general in society, I think there is that idea where it is connected to a certain attitude or a certain point of wanting to stand out and wanting to rebel against society. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think culturally, I can speak to this. I think say that we're all Latin here, meaning come from Central America somewhere, or Mexico. In our culture, tattoos are not seen as something positive. It's seen as something negative. I can even speak to an episode that happened to my cousin years ago. He actually is a tattoo artist in LA, and he went with my grandfather to El Salvador to watch a game, soccer. And they were at the stadium, and my grandfather told him, don't take off your shirt. Because here, when you have tattoos, you're automatically connected to a gang. It's just how it is. My cousin, of course, didn't listen. Long story short, there was a gang there, and because they didn't recognize him, they just assumed he was from another. He literally had to run out of that stadium for his life. Mm-hmm. So culturally for us, I could speak at least for myself, there is a negative, and there is a negative connotation, and it is connected to rebellion. And that's just an example of that.
And I think it's us being biculturally, I think it's very important. Because, we do live in the United States of America, so there is a variance here in America. Mm-hmm. But I think, if we're honest with ourselves, it would still fall on the rebellion side of the society than not. Mm-hmm. But, it's definitely magnified more in our countries. Like, you are from El Salvador, right? And I know in Salvador there's the Mara Salvatrucha, the Mara 18. It's a very, very known gang. And if you go to the prisons there, you'll see all of them are tacked, and they're tacked up to their face, their arms, and everything, because it's something that they identify with. It's what identifies their lifestyle, identifies their rebellion. So I think that's an honest thing for us to consider when I'm wanting to get a tattoo as a Christian. What is it really attached to? Why is it that I want to get a tattoo? Is it because I'm trying to be rebellious? Is it because I'm trying to identify with the world? And those are questions that I really believe are something that we need to each of ask ourselves. When I would get this question in youth group, I wouldn't answer with a yes or a no. I would always ask, what is the reason you want to get it? Because it's really where you need to get to the point, which is what is your motivation behind wanting to get a tattoo? And what do you think is the majority? You guys are young here, so please participate. What is the reason most kids or young people your age, sorry about the kids, young people your age why do they want to get a tattoo?
I think it's to fit in with society.
Okay.
Also to like be cool in a way, because a lot of people, I know a lot of mostly guys around this generation tend to want to get tattoos because they want to be like look like gangs almost, but it may not be their intention. But I think that's what it's cool to get a tattoo to us younger people.
Yeah, because it's cool. That's an honest answer. Anybody else?
I'm not necessarily like in the same age range, but
You're old. Just kidding.
I'm not that old, but like
Okay.
but
You're not old there.
I think one of the things that I personally haven't ever been drawn to getting a tattoo, but I think the closest thing I have been drawn to was, or at least the reasoning that I've been drawn to the most is like to feel like something is different about you, or like something that sets me apart from the other people. I guess I could understand like if someone was coming from like a household where like they feel like they didn't matter or they mattered less than the other people around them. They can probably like they might resort to like I want to get a tattoo because this sets me apart. This makes me feel and look different than maybe my 8 other brothers and sisters or something like that.
And I think those are the two main things: to fit in or to stand out. We're honest with ourselves. That's probably why people want to get a tattoo. And if that is the reason, we have to contend with the verse that the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 10:31. If I can read it here, it says, "Therefore, whatever you do," it says, "whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God." So that's what really is the issue we have to ask ourselves. Am I doing this for the glory of God? And like I said, some people put a verse or whatever. Like I said, I'm not going to say you're going to sin by doing that, but the majority of cases, the majority of the people that are asking whether I should get a tattoo, it's not because they want to glorify God through that tattoo. It's usually because they want to stand out or they want to fit in. And that's where, yes. Uh-huh.
Can I add something? I think also, from my point of view, it's such a normal thing in our culture, in our society nowadays. Like, if you were to go get a tattoo, I don't think anybody would be like, oh, it's bad unless, church, when you go to church and stuff. And I think it's just so normalized that you just think, why not? If you are getting piercings or dyeing your hair or anything like that, you're like, okay, it's not hurting anyone else, so why not? And and I think that's a mentality that a lot of people my age are now thinking because it's just so normalized.
Yeah, and like I said, it's how can I word it? It's very human of us to think that way. But as Christians, we need to be beyond that. We need to be able to say, does this glorify Christ? Because there's the why not. Yeah, there's a reason why not. There's a lot of liberties. Even the Bible says that we are at liberty to do many things. But we have to limit ourselves if we know it's going to serve as an obstacle, if we know it's going to serve as a bad testimony. But here it's really more just talking about an issue of the heart. Why do I need to get this? Because, let me just throw this out there. I'm not saying this is the case, but let's just say the physical act of getting a tattoo may not be a sin. I'm just saying, maybe. But we're dealing with the issue behind why you want to get to the tattoo that's probably sinful, which is either wanting to look cool, wanting to fit in, or wanting to show my rebellion, right? And that's really the sin that tattoo may just be a symptom of a deeper sin that you really have to deal with.
I also wanted to mention, I know there's a few people that I know who have tattoos, but they get them as to serve as a reminder of something maybe they lived in their past, or something they've gone through that just represents who they are. And I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not sure what you think about that.
Like, you mean like a memorial?
Yeah, or like, some people who've gone through, like, let's say cancer, and they decide to put like a symbol that represents like what they've been through. And I don't know what you think about that.
So again, motivation first. So you might say, well, this is a good motivation, right? But then you still have to deal with testimony, how people are going to see that. Am I going to see me as identifying with a certain group of society as more rebellious? Or you still have to do that. And like I said, that's why when I told Derek we were going to do this episode, I said, we're going to have to be very down the middle with this issue, because yes, there's people that do that, and they might be very loving Christians. And that's why I said I wouldn't judge someone if I see their life that actually represents a life that loves God, that's passionate about Christ, and then they decide to do that because they want to remember a verse or whatever. I'll let them be with it between them and God. I wouldn't judge them for it. But as far as why we're sharing why our church chooses that position is because of these. Because I think the more likely than not, a lot of people will be wanting to get tattoos or to do that just to be able to stand out, rebel, or to fit in with the world. And that's the 95%, 97% of the cases. And we have to be very, very careful with that. Because at the end of the day, too, have you ever thought, why is it so many adults, like in our church, you guys are witnesses to this. We don't really touch on this subject much from the pulpit. But if you notice, the people that come and that have gotten saved, most of them are usually trying to hide their tattoos. Why? Why is that a natural thing? It's not. No one's told them that it's wrong. No one's told them, but it's something that the Holy Spirit sort of tells them I shouldn't be wearing. Like, I know one of our hermanas here has tattoos, and she can't really hide them. She can't really hide them, and that's fine. God saved her. She's redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. She can't erase them. That's fine, But there's something within her that makes her feel like wanting to take them. And then with time, a lot of people end up like wanting to even take them off, because they're like, usually there's even things that we want to memorialize that are wrong, or stuff like that, or like a loved one, and like they're not even with them anymore, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then like, oops, try to change the R into an A to make it a new name. So that's also a thing that I think it also speaks to where maybe we should fall on the issue, because like I said, even in our church, even though we don't mention it, you could see the reaction of people just naturally starting to say, I want to cover this up. I don't want to be people see this, because they something within them tells them that it's not part of the new life in Christ.
I think that's one thing we need to. I was thinking about how we want to glorify the Lord, and if that's the question you can ask yourself regarding the decision to get it or not, I think that's the core, as you were talking about, because we know the truth. We have a little bit more, not expectation, but we have more knowledge of what right and wrong is, and we know the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And I think that's one thing, to get the root of what you were saying, like the motivation of why are you doing that. It also speaks to being honest to yourself, and I think that's important for all to do, because then you're going to be able to sift out maybe lies you're telling yourselves, because we do that all the time, right?
Yeah.
When we want to do something,
All
we're
the
like,
time.
we justify it. So I think that's so important for us at all levels as believers to ask, well, why? Because it will get to the deep root of what that is, and then you're going to be able to make the decision that God has put in your heart.
Exactly. It's all about motivation. Like also, I remember this verse in 1 Peter 3:4 where it talks about the outward adornment, and that we need to, as Christians, be focused on the inward adornment. It doesn't mean that we can't adorn ourselves, but it also, I think there's we were talking about this earlier, about the principle of modesty. What modesty means, somewhere in the middle, right? Where it's not going to be calling the attention for either being too...
One extreme or
the
other.
Extreme or the other. Like, you come to church without combing your hair and in your peaches, you're going to call out the attention. You're going to be But if you come with this huge, makeup, like a Mary Kay truck hit you or something, you're also going to call the attention. So God talks about moderation. That's the idea of modesty. So whatever we do to be in a position where our physical appearance will not distract from people seeing Christ within me. That needs to be the focus. So I think that's also something whoever's considering this decision to get a tattoo or not should really consider, and being honest with the Lord.
It's kind of like the reason, like, why are you going to glow up? Are you going to dress up for church because you want to maybe catch the eye of the person next to you? Or are you trying to look good for church because you want to please God more? You want, like, I do my hair, I pick out the best clothes, I iron out my suit or my dress shirt or whatever. I do all this because whenever I go to church, it's an honor, and I'm not going to show the king some rags, right? I'm going to do my best to show the king my best, right?
That's true.
And I guess that if you don't mind me bringing up a question that I had about a comment, something that you mentioned before. You talked about testimony, and I know that. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and ask a question. Is having to explain your testimony to someone, like whether it is because you got a tattoo of something you've been through, like one of those pink cancer ribbons for people who are going through breast cancer, or having to deal with another issue, is having to explain your testimony a bad thing, or I guess a sin? Like, how is it important how others perceive us in terms of our own spiritual journey?
Yes. The Bible's very clear about that we're here as ambassadors. And the Bible's clear in that position where it says that we're here in 2 Corinthians 5:20, where it says we're the ambassadors of the gospel. So if you just take that example, if you're an ambassador of China, you're here in the United States territory to advance China's interests, but also the way you behave, the things you do, how you behave is going to reflect on your country that you're here to represent. So yes, whatever we do as Christians, our behavior, our way of living, our way of dressing ourselves, our entertainment, there's so many things we could talk about, is either going to reflect well on him who we're coming to represent or bad. And it's really not so much of a neutral area. So yes, we definitely as Christians have to be very aware that we have to be a good testimony. In other words, and sometimes the way it's helped me to think about it, being a good testimony is also, it's not so much talking, which is great when you get the chance to talk to others, but it's also living in a way that you're not going to distract from Christ, where you're not going to repel people from Christ. So that's why all these questions and all these things we have to consider. Is this really going to help people to see Christ in me and to want to know more about Christ in me, or is it going to do the opposite, And yes, I think that's a very important consideration for us to think about as we're...
You have to take that into account when you're making decisions like this, because it does impact, right? And people can say, well, I'm not doing anything to them. But in reality, if you really do reflect our individual responsibility as a believer, you're not here for you. We're here. We were just talking about this morning in Sunday school. We're here to be light. We're here to represent the Lord. We're not here to have fun until God decides to come and pick us up, right? It's not about us. And I think that's really... it's hard because we are human, and that's a natural thing you want to do, to be about you, but it's not about us, right? It's about Jesus. It's about telling others. It's about being light in darkness through maybe not even our talk, but how we dress, how we speak, as what Pastor, all the examples he gave, like what we're watching, what we're listening to, social media. I mean, it's just a reminder of the importance of our responsibility as individual Christians and believers.
Yeah. I want to bring up 2 verses. I'm wondering, how would you react, young people, to someone using these verses for this topic? Because it does fit in. For example, some people would use the whole idea of the body of Christ, right? I mean, the temple of Christ. The body is the temple of Christ, and if we get it to 2, is like putting a graffiti on a church, right?
That's a common
or
one.
a temple. So that's a common one. What do you guys think when someone uses that verse or that argument with that verse? Does it hold water?
I think it does, because when you see a nice building or something that you respect, you imagine it to be nice and like maintained, like a house nicely painted, nothing like bad or anything. So I think it's a pretty good argument, in my opinion.
Okay.
But what if that tattoo was freaking gorgeous? I'm gonna bring up, like, there's a counterexample to that, to the argument. Like, if you see a pretty building and you see someone like tattooed a gang sign on the wall of the building, right? Obviously, like, we're not gonna like that. Like, that's like such a pretty building. What a shame, right? But what if like it was a mural? What if it was something like a gorgeous, like a wonderful looking painting? What if it was like the Michelangelo paintings in the ceiling? I can't remember what, the Sistine Chapel? I can't remember. Yeah, like, what if it was one of those like those amazing paintings, right? Same thing could be said about, I mean, in the sake of this argument, same thing could be said about a tattoo, right? What if the tattoo was an amazing looking tattoo? Obviously, given the motivation that we already talked about, what if it was an amazing looking tattoo?
You were going to say something?
I was just also thinking in the way that, like, some people would be like, well, it's not that serious, like, you know. And I think, I don't know.
And
it's a difficult question.
That's why I asked the question, does it hold water? I think it's a good principle. Like she said, it's a good principle, but it's not the main principle. We can't really come out and say, well, this is why it's wrong because there is some application, but it's not the best applications, because then you can come up with counter arguments like the way. We have to go back to the issue of the heart. We have to go back to the issue of intent, of our motivation for wanting to get that tattoo. And that's really where I want to finish. I don't know how we're doing on time.
I do have another follow-up question, but we have some time left.
So let's do the follow-up question first, because there's one verse I really wanted to finish with, because I think at the end of the day, this is what's going to be something who's dealing with this issue or this question should also read and deal with this verse. But go ahead, your follow-up question.
Yeah, follow-up question. So let's take a what-ifism. I know that's kind of a fallacy, but I want to take like a what-if example here, like a hypothetical. What if in American culture, or in really any culture, what if tattoos were just as accepted as how Americans accept lipstick and earrings? Like, people thought culturally, like 100% with their full mind, like a tattoo will be the same thing as if I had like the best clothing to give praise to God. If I had the best, like my best earrings for Sunday, if I had my best lipstick, not me for example, but like a woman who did that. But like, culturally speaking, what if tattoos were just as accepted and appreciated like these other adornations?
Well, what if questions are always hard to answer because they are hypotheticals.
Yes.
But if this was a debate, I'm just kidding. I would say we have history from the time of Leviticus to the present, and that hasn't changed. In every society, it still has a connotation of a negative connotation. So if it one day would turn positive, yes, we could have a different discussion.
Well, I mean, there's also like the dang it, it was there's a word to actually call this culture. It's leaving me now. It's the group of people who were featured in Moana, but like Hawaiian people.
They do get some like that. But even then, that has more of a tribal or identification.
And the motivation going back to the root of that. There's a motivation behind it, like a reason, not just because.
And like I said, it might be a good example of where it has changed a little bit, because now it's more identification with culture and everything. Well, but its roots are we're still savage. We're still a lot of identification with warrior race and wanting to kill off another one. That's how you would identify and stuff, especially in the Polynesian cultures.
That's a word. Thank you.
Yeah, Polynesian
cultures. Thank you. Sorry
Polynesian
about that.
cultures. So, but still, like I said, it's hard with the what ifs. But yeah, again, we go back to the heart. We go back to why, because we live in this society and this is where we are. And like I said, something within me also tells me, like I said, this is my preference. Please don't get me wrong. But my conviction also is this, that if the devil has found a way for every culture to do this, it must be something that goes against God, that he's worked so hard to make sure every culture does it. Doesn't matter what culture where you come from, everybody's dealing with that, because it's like it may be also connection to the whole being made in the image of God, where we're made in the image of God, and he wants to pervert that in some way or form. But there's something within that too that also calls to me, and I'm like, maybe it's probably not the best idea.
I also was wondering that, like, going to what you were saying, why does it, like, I know we can't answer why he doesn't talk about it more, but like if it was more important, I've always heard this, that God doesn't waste ink, and the important stuff that he really wants us to like get down, he will say it several times. And I feel like this, he kind of says it like once or twice and then doesn't really talk about it. So that's why I think it becomes so subjective. And I was just wondering that as to, is it really subjective, or is it
he does
something
not
more
waste
definitive?
ink. And like I said, that's where it's like Derek mentioned in the intro, the whole legalism thing. Sometimes people get very legalistic with the whole Leviticus. It's a straight no. God says no, but there's more of the deeper meaning of why he said no. Why should we do it? Why shouldn't we do it? And like you said, sometimes yes, God doesn't waste ink, and he did mention it in Leviticus, but the principles still are repeated in the New Testament about being holy, about being different, about representing Christ, about not being an obstacle. So those are all things that I think a young person should really consider before that. And that's why I wanted to finish with this verse in Romans chapter 14, verse 23, because it says, "But he who doubts is condemned if he eats, because he does not eat from faith. Whatever is not from faith is sin." So whoever decides or is trying to struggle with this question, should I get a tattoo or not, they really have to make peace with this and ask themselves, am I fully convinced that God is in this decision? Am I fully convinced it's God's will for me to get a tattoo? And that's the question you will have to answer, right? Because it says if you don't do it from faith, if you don't do it because you really are convinced God is okay with you getting that tattoo and you're going to glorify him, you're going to be a better testimony to him, whatever, then it automatically becomes a sin. And that's even something we have to deal with. Because even if the answer was it's not a sin to get tattoo, the act of itself, if you're not fully convinced biblically that the Bible gives you that liberty, and you're doing it for any other reason, whether it's rebellion, looking cool, wanting to fit in, then it automatically becomes a sin to you. Because it says whatever is not of faith, it is instead sin. So it's something you have to be fully convinced before God that it is okay. That it is okay, and that God gives you that permission to do it. So okay. That's the reason why we don't do it.
Okay. Anyone have any other follow-up ideas or questions? I know that some of the guests, you guys were excited about this question in particular. Maybe if you have any follow-up questions, do you want to bring that up? No?
No.
All right.
And again, did you have any, you were saying that you had seen Christian artists, right? I think it maybe it was he, maybe not, that maybe had tattoos. Yeah. Was it you? I can't remember.
No, I don't think so. It was me.
Okay. Well, I guess I will wrap up. We'll probably have some time to talk afterward if we want to end up talking about this a little bit more. But wraps up this conversation for now. Thank you for joining us on Deeper Roots. I hope that you guys will join us in the future again. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Deeper Roots. If you want to submit a question, follow up on something we talked about on the podcast, or you want to find us online, you can go to our webpage, which is ibbvn.org/deeperroots. Deeper Roots is a ministry of Iglesia Bíblica Baptista Vida Nueva, which is a local church in Castro Valley, California. And you can learn more about us and our church by going to our website, ibbvn.org.